So, saying what you have said, what were the choices for Assad?
Assad was given no choice. Assad began by lifting all controls on internet in the end of January 2011 itself. What was told to me by people who were in the government and close to the ruling circle was that he called a meeting at the end of January after Tunis had been, Ben Ali had been thrown out and Tahrir Square had begun, and said, we have been going too slow on the opening up of thing. We must now move faster towards democracy. And the first step was that all the what you call it, controls on internet were removed. The most important one to be affected was Facebook. Syrians were accessing Facebook in large numbers, but they were doing it through proxy sites. Now they were able to do it directly. And of course the numbers increased enormously, and all subsequent calls, including the first calls of the Democrats for a demonstration in front of Parliament, were given over Facebook. So that was the first thing. In March, when this thing took place in Daraa, he sent his ministers, including his closest advisor, a lady called Buthaina Shahban, to Daraa, and the 5 demands, including the removal of the governor, the removal of the intelligence chief, the lowering of diesel prices, the easing of land transfer laws, and food subsidies, all these were accepted and announced 6 days later on the 20th of March from Damascus. Also 230 people who had been arrested during there were 2 sets of demonstrations in Daraa, were also released. All that was done. And then after that, unfortunately, it didn't stop. There were further attacks, because it was then that they realized that there was nothing spontaneous about what was happening. The demand always was, Assad must go. And the West said, Assad must go first. Whereas what Assad was saying was, I will work with the Syrian opposition and bring in democracy.
So he was forced to fail.
Well, he hasn't failed, actually. The democracy has been brought in. But in spite of the West, and the West refused to recognize it. What happened after that was that between March and July, all the laws, repressive laws of the authoritarian regime were repealed. Secret courts were abolished. Emergency, the law of emergency which had existed in Syria since the coming of the Ba'ath Party in 1958 was lifted, which opened the way to free, all these, you couldn't get together in the streets, etc., all that stuff, plus all the wiretapping and everything that it disallowed was abolished. Of course, these things don't change overnight, but the point is they became illegal. The third thing that he did was he announced that a new constitution would be framed, and preparatory to that, he removed the ban on political parties. All this was done before July. In July, he called a grand meeting of all opposition forces for a 2-day meeting in Damascus. And that meeting was attended by 80% of the Syrian opposition. And they drew up the outlines of the constitution, which was then worked on, and a 187-clause constitution, which is similar to the French Fifth Republic constitution, was then put to the vote on February 26, 2012. 57% of the Syrians came out and voted. Nobody has denied this figure. And 89% of those who voted, endorsed the constitution. The constitution required an election within 3 months. The election was held in May. It was a multi-party election, but the majority of the parties which fought were also parties which had good relations with the Ba'ath. However, there were others who fought, and there were those who were really totally opposed, had not joined. including Manna's 16-party coalition for a peaceful transition to democracy, Haitham Manna, who I mentioned earlier. And so that's why he's in Paris. They had not joined. 80% had joined. Instead of sending observers to this conference, the British and French ambassadors went to Daraa first, went to the Al-Omari Mosque, met the people, who were fighting, the rebels, and told them, "You're doing a great thing. Keep fighting. We are with you." Then they went the second day, they went to Hama, and they met again the rebel leaders, and they said, "We are with you. Keep fighting." When they came back, the Syrian government was really very angry, and Bathana Shaiban gave a series of interviews on the TV saying this is absolutely unacceptable behavior. That at the time when we are trying to frame democracy, that the ambassadors of these two countries should be going and provoking and inciting rebellion in the country. After that, both of them had to withdraw their ambassadors. That is when the ambassadors left.